Ligjërata e parë është për Marc Cairns, e cili është njëri prej themeluesve të Pidgin Perfect, është një art and architecture collective prej Glasgow-it. Ka qenë pjesë të organizimit shumë të vende në bienale, po edhe në ekspozitën e fundit që kanë pasur në Lighthouse në Glasgow, të cilin jam mundu edhe këtu me shfaqjen të fundit. Është një ekspozitë interaktive, i kanë nalt nëse mund me shku vizitoni. Po ndoshta në zgjatë shumë se jena pak limituar me kohë, se janë 3 ligjërata, se ditën e parë e kisha ftuar Markun që më ia nisë një herë me ligjërat. Please Mark, yours.
Okay, so good evening everyone. Thanks for joining me this evening at this wonderful venue. It's a great pleasure to speak at the National Museum of Kosovo and to be part of Kosovo Architecture Festival 2017. It's a fantastic initiative and it's very inspiring to see so many engaged young people participating in the festival over the past couple of days that I've been here. So thanks to Ekim and the rest of the organising team for inviting me to present tonight, and thank you to all the previous speakers this week who have been really informative and entertaining. I look forward to learning and researching much more about your projects in the future. I also wanted to thank Renor and Muesli, two festival volunteers who assisted me on Tuesday morning when I was very sleepy from flying in the night before to install the exhibition upstairs. So if you haven't seen it upstairs, the exhibition's until Sunday, so if you haven't already done so, please pop by and pick up your free copy of the publication, which is also on your chair this evening. Now, I apologise that I know absolutely no Albanian whatsoever, and as a Scotsman, my English is often very broken also. So please bear with me this evening. I will do my best to talk slow. I talk very fast, and hopefully everyone will be able to take something away from my talk this evening. So tonight I wanted to share with you the values and the work of my practice, Pidgin Perfect. So now, unlike many of the previous lectures this week, what we do at Pidgin Perfect does not present itself very visually as traditional architecture. And during my presentation, you'll see very little buildings, but you will see lots and lots of people. And I guess this sort of sums up the work we do at Pidgin Perfect and how we approach architecture and planning. We place people at the heart of our projects with the aim to build better communities for everyone. Finding creative ways to engage people with the decision-making processes around the built environment, and working with our clients to develop new approaches for working with communities. So some of you who aren't familiar with our work might be sitting there thinking, what is a Pidgin Perfect? And that's fair. So I wanted to give you all a quick introduction to who we are and what we do, not only in Scotland, but nationally in the UK and internationally. So Pidgin Perfect is an award-winning creative consultancy. We work internationally on a wide range of creative events, development programs and placemaking projects. Since 2011, we've worked with a wide range of public and private sector clients, such as Architecture and Design Scotland, Balfour Beatty, a big construction firm globally, the British Council, Historic England, National Theatre of Scotland, and the Scottish Government to place people at the heart of their projects. We have an established track record working with a wide variety of citizen stakeholders to deliver community engagement and communication programs, creative events, neighbourhood planning, master planning, innovative art strategies, all which respond to the unique contextual qualities of place through temporary and permanent intervention. From our office in the Barrows Market, which is an old flea market in the east end of Glasgow, our dynamic team, we work from there. We have a really broad depth of expertise across urbanism, business development, creative engagement, public art and curation. And over the past 6 years, we've engaged some of the most diverse communities in Scotland and across the UK in the process of change, always using design and cultural activity to create connections between people and place. We work directly with communities in all of our projects, and how we work with communities is that we encourage and support not only individual and social, but also civic and intercultural participation with the built environment. And we believe in positive stewardship and active collaboration with every part of the community, not just the usual suspects who tend to get involved in these processes. And we see our role as designers, as creatives, as architects, to draw out local knowledge and to strengthen networks that exist and create new links with the wider context of places, but also to enhance what already exists. So it's not about replacing it, it's about enhancing it. And we believe that we are experts in motivating active citizenship through honest exchanges and guided learning. And I guess to understand how and why we practice the way that we do at Pidgin Perfect, it's key to understand my journey into practice. From being a student of architecture, like many of you here this evening, and undertaking my first undergraduate job after completing my bachelor's degree at a studio with Daniel Libeskind in New York. So initially I was very excited to be working with such a world-renowned architect. And I was equally excited about moving to New York. But when I was working at Libeskind, I began to realise that the type of architecture being practiced was not the way that I wanted to practice. And it was very disconnected from context, from community, and from people. And whilst I understand that with major commercial clients this can often be the case, it felt more and more some days like I was working for an international marketing agency rather than a studio concerned with high quality architecture and planning. So I was actually working on a project in this general region for 10 months. I was one of 3 people at the age of 21 working on the entire new master plan for downtown Belgrade and the Belgrade-Danube waterfront project, which, as I'm sure many of you might know, was quite a controversial project. As I said, it was a very small team and I was very inexperienced and I didn't really know what I was doing, but I was just kind of told to get on with it and wasn't really encouraged to do any research, not really even to Google it. It was very bizarre. And I think it became this process of, rather than building for a context and building for a relationship to site, it was kind of pinching and pulling from failed projects elsewhere and placing them on this site. So I found it to be a very bizarre experience, and at the end of it I felt that what we were proposing was more or less turning Belgrade into LA rather than Belgrade. So when I returned to Scotland after that experience, I thought about what I wanted to do for my Masters, and I partnered with a fellow student of mine, Delia Diemo, who had a very similar experience at Atelier Jean Lebel, where he'd been working in Paris and designing this new private residential complex in Sydney, and they forgot that the sun rose on a different side of the, and then they had to put a big mirror on the end, so it was very confusing. So we kind of thought about our experiences working in these practices, and we thought that we wanted to use our Masters as a way to critique that. So we developed a project that was directly linked to asking people to critique and understand their built environment and significant changes that were taking place around them. So we set up a project office in the East End of Glasgow and developed a project around the closure of a market, and not just any market, like the only real remaining working class sort of second-hand bric-a-brac market in Glasgow. And it was closed down because Glasgow was getting the Commonwealth Games in 2014 and it no longer fit the global identity that Glasgow was trying to create. So a very kind of interesting discussion for us to undertake, and we spent the summer really working with traders and with people indigenous to that community, developing a number of exhibitions. We had an open office, we had temporary cinema events, we did walking tours, we worked with artists, just testing and experimenting with ways in which we might engage people to become part of this conversation. And from that, we really enjoyed that process more than anything else. I'm not sure if we were very good at it, but we very much enjoyed it. And we decided to keep going. We weren't quite finished yet. And we continued to experiment for a few months with that role of the architect, and we began playing with place on a number of projects across Glasgow, including some sort of creating temporary and permanent interventions in community gardens. We did some public art projects, all for actual clients who were quite interested in the work that we were doing, and this slightly new approach, or renaissance of an approach that was taking place post the 2008 crash of development. So we set up a practice and began to do little bits and pieces of work, and from there there's been many projects that have followed. We've been working across all sectors of community development, arts and culture, development programs, and strategic placemaking. And we've achieved a lot in the 6 years of our operation. I'm very proud of the work that we've produced and the recognition we've received. We won the Royal Scottish Academy Medal for Architecture in 2012, the Scottish Quality and Planning Award in 2013, and the Society Award in 2014. But I think what I want to kind of touch on tonight is a little bit about what we think is important in terms of working in community practice and as an architect or a planner working with people. And I guess how to best demonstrate that is the addition to our diverse portfolio at home. We've also worked really hard to ensure and lead in a number of major international projects and commissions. We really believe these have developed our practice thinking and has provided our team with a real continuous public platform to reflect and refine on how we deal with architecture and planning, and how we consult for communities, and how we bring people in place together. So I wanted to dip into these projects tonight as I feel that they visualise the issues and the ideas within community practice that we are inherently interested in and focused on. And I guess the first of these international projects came when, in 2012, we were invited to represent Scotland at the 13th Venice Architecture Biennale. Now, bearing in mind, we'd been established for about 12 months, so that was a pretty daunting and scary opportunity, but we thought we would go for it and see what happens. And I guess the challenge for us was not to, in a moment when we were given an architectural stage, not default to building architecture. We could have easily went there and built a really nice pavilion and got some nice photographs on the zine, but we wanted to really test the ideas we were looking at in Glasgow and take them into Venice, which is quite difficult when you don't speak Italian or Venetian and you have no real links to communities that exist there. But in our project, Banchetto, playing 3 acts, we partnered with a Venetian charitable foundation to engage directly with the remaining working class community of Venice. So there's the Giardini and the Arsenale, or the 2 exposition areas in Venice, and the strip that connects them is the Castello Alto Basso, and that is basically where, if you are indigenous to Venice, that's where you live, and it's full of restaurants and cafes and bars. So the people who lived around that area wants to work with them, and we wanted to invite them to discuss with us the impact that the Biennale has on their daily lives and their daily experiences. So to do that, we essentially had spent a lot of time and budget getting to know them, buying them a lot of Prosecco, taking them to lunch, and just really getting them to trust us, that we wanted to find out who they are, and we weren't really just dropping into doing an art project and then buggering off. So, but ultimately what it culminated in was staging essentially the idea of a medieval banquet in a square in their community. And in that banquet, working with local people to create a menu of food and drink, and then also curating and designing the whole experience, from the menu to the tablecloth to the plates to the people sitting around the table. We had everyone from local cafe workers to curators for pavilions at the Biennale, to academics from UAV, the School of Architecture, to local sex workers. So a real diverse cross-section of community living and working in Venice. And we basically asked them all just to join us and give a toast to the bride, as the Italian weddings do, and the bride being Venice. And essentially what we were creating was one really large networking event that was based around place, was based around experience, and we wanted to try and create the foundations for a much more improved and mutually beneficial relationship between the community and the private organisations that operate in that area. And it was magical. It was a piece of theatre, and It doesn't look like a piece of architecture, but I think what we were doing there was creating you know, a domestic setting and enacting everything that happens within architecture within an outdoor environment. We've also presented projects at the 2012 World Design Capital in Helsinki and the 2014 World Design Capital in Cape Town. And in both these projects, we created a program of design and cultural events to activate and raise awareness across local populations around issues as diverse as the privatisation of public spaces to the power of creativity to bridge divides in challenged and tense communities. And in 2014, we delivered a project for the Commonwealth Games, which was quite interesting because our practice began as sort of beginning to critique the impacts of these large international festivals and expositions on cities, and then we were invited to deliver one of those events. So again, we could have just did something quite self-indulgent. There was a big budget, but we decided to use that a bit differently and spread our project across 6 months and do many small interventions, activities and projects with as many community groups as we could, from exploring signage within shop fronts and creating screen printing with local teenagers to creating inflatable sculptures to pin around the local community to create iconic symbols of the community and help them visualize their civic pride. What was really about for us was using our tools and our skill sets as architects and designers to help this community, I guess, visualize their enthusiasm for welcoming outsiders to Glasgow into their community, and to helping them to be a part of something that really was much bigger than them and that they didn't get a lot of involvement or connection to, as many of these big international events tend to do on local communities. So we created 2 permanent interventions as well, working with international but local artists. This is a work to reference the legacy of the games with Jacqueline Donnelly, and then a piece of sculpture with an artist called Ian Kettles, which is to reference the sort of industrial heritage of that community. But ultimately what it was all about was a continuous piece of work rather than parachuting in, doing something and leaving. We actually returned back to Africa in 2015 with our project Creative Lagos for the British Council's UK Nigeria season. And in this project we supported creative communities across Lagos to self-organise. Because basically the development taking place in Lagos is so rapid that Google can't even keep up. You know, the maps are so out of date all the time, and this rapid pace of development was beginning to massively impact on creative studios, artist spaces, small spaces for micro-businesses to manufacture, and whilst we have no ability to stop that, we can help them to find a way to visualise their presence better. So we created this kind of visual platform for them to literally place themselves on the map and then share content about what it is that they do, and then share it across social media and try to build a buzz and a real kind of frequency of information to make it easier for them to gather support when they had to fight with developers to retain their spaces. In 2016, we were really proud to be selected to work with 2 Pakistani artists, Anam Laba and Marc Cairns, to create a significant suite of new civic realm artworks for a Lahori park, Banajina. And this was part of the 2016 Lahore Biennale, which is created by Rashid Rana. And this was a really challenging project, not only because as a white man from Britain going into previously colonial environment and being asked to create something, it was quite complicated. But also that we were being asked to respond to very recent and significant terrorist attacks that were taking place in Pakistan and actually in green spaces in the months prior to the project starting in March 2016, and kind of work with the Biennale as a tool to then encourage the government of Punjab to understand that it could still be okay to create spaces for people to gather and for people to come together, for people to share their daily experiences within parks, and to try and combat the increasingly privatised and restricted access and the securitisation of public spaces in Lahore. So to do this, we did what we always kind of did and what we do, and we involved more people than the budget and our time and mental ability could probably deal with, and we engaged a theatre company to help us launch and choreograph a series of public events for this 20 by 20 foot marble compass of the park, and showed kind of creating a festival that brought people together on a number of occasions across the week that we were there, to kind of just show that people weren't scared anymore. And then we also created these stools that sat across the park that were telling people about the amazing flora that existed within the park, these fantastically old trees. So a very kind of modest intervention in some ways, but actually information and giving people more reason to journey through the park or to stay. I know this looks really silly, but it's got a real purpose to it, I guess. So I guess the international aspect is really important to us, and 2017 has been no different. So we just presented the project Memory Monsters at the London Festival of Architecture last month, and in this project we invented storybook characters based on landmarks in Vauxhall. This is actually Oswald, who's representing Vauxhall City Farm. And what we were doing there was finding a way to disarm people, so that we could create a tool within a very public space to engage people in quite difficult conversations around the 9 Elms development, which is happening just across, just next to Vauxhall. We're doing this project in Vauxhall, which is in the southwest of London, and it's quite a controversial project. So we were trying to find ways to get people to engage with it in a positive way, and to ask new and different questions. And I guess, again, it's about kind of visualising challenges and finding fun and interactive ways to hook into some really difficult questions that we often get asked to speak with people about as designers and as consultants. We're also very excited, obviously, to be in Pristina and present our work here at the festival. But also this week I have colleagues who are in Nairobi, and we're launching a project there at the moment for British Council's East African New Arts Programme, and what we're doing there is looking at the kind of phenomenon within Kenya and Ethiopia right now of thrift socials and people using market spaces as a place to not only meet and gather, but also to share and make. So that's been a really exciting project for us to do, and there'll be more information about that you can find online. I guess the point of showing those kind of international festival projects is to kind of demonstrate my belief in that the experience and the networks and the learning gained from working out with contexts that we're familiar with, out with places that we know, has really helped define the foundations of who we are as a practice, and of how we play with place across Scotland and the rest of the UK. And it's this idea of travelling to learn, or whether it be for a project or attending a conference such as UN Habitat 3 in Ecuador in September, or visiting development programmes across the Balkans and Central West Asia, which I did last year as a Winston Churchill Fellow. We found these to be really most beneficial to developing the rigour of our practice based in Scotland. So how is it that we get to work this way? I guess going back to my initial comments about my experience working in New York, how do we get to do these projects that don't look like architecture and look more like fun? Well, we do get to do them, and very surprisingly we get paid to do them. We get to perform very different roles in architecture, which I find really exciting. And I think this is something that I wanted to talk about tonight, because I think too often the work that architects and planners do is presented without providing the real financial or political context that we must and that we do operate in. And I think that's especially important, as there is a lot of this, as a lot of architects, a lot of planners, and we all have to find a way to create sustainable, creative careers, employ people and have jobs. So I think if we can find ways to operate within the same realm but do it differently, there's more opportunity for us all to do that. So So I guess to give you a bit of a background into that, at Pidgin Perfect we're essentially paid by clients who require significant evidence of critical, creative and community engagement with their projects, develop support for place-based recommendations. So our jobs come directly through private clients. We compete with others to be commissioned by local authorities, by councils, by public bodies. But we also self-initiate a lot of our own ideas, and we fundraise for those ideas to deliver them. But all of our jobs in the UK are centred around the built environment, with our core service being to work creatively with individuals, with groups, with communities to enlist and listen to their concerns, their ideas and their opinions, and to inform key placemaking projects. So I guess what's quite important about that as well is that the combined backgrounds of our team, they encompass many aspects. We're not all architects, and thank God we're not. And they have many skills that I feel with architecture and planning that are required to operate within these development projects of real varying skills and significance. So this means that we're able to facilitate conversations as diverse as looking at the social impact of offshore renewable technologies on coastal communities in Scotland to community growing in the west of Glasgow. And for us, it's about connecting with people on the ground through designing cultural activities, and that's fundamental to our approach. And we're generous with our time, and we always like to try and nurture ongoing relationships with groups and individuals across the course of projects. And that's always quite hard to balance, the complicated situation of often being paid by, more often than not, the organisation or the authority that's causing the problem. So we work with local councils a lot, and we're paid by them to go and kind of solve their briefs, and 9 times out of 10 they've caused the problem in the first place. So it's quite an interesting relationship that we have to these kind of projects. But we're really, I think what's really important is that we believe that we're really crucially aware of the difference between quick consensus and long-term results. They're two very, very different things. And often when architects and planners are working with people, their challenge is to get people to agree really quickly and then that solve the problem, but it doesn't work that way. So we always try really hard to build mechanisms and devices to ensure that when our paid time in a project concludes and we have to move on, that there's a structure in place there for the people that we've engaged to continue to have a voice and to be able to contribute to those projects. And often this can take the form of a toolkit or just a really informed and instructive handover, but we have to make sure that whenever we're working with people, it's a mutually beneficial experience. We're not just gathering data from them and they're not really learning or getting anything from it. So we always try to make that as kind of active as possible. And I guess above all, we aim for our projects to be inclusive, open and accessible to everyone in the community. And we try to use non-traditional consultation techniques, whether that's being a monster or doing something different, but something you won't see is loads of post-it notes saying, what do you think, write it down. We just don't do that because we find it boring. If we're bored, then other people will be bored. And I think what's also important is we really try to engage audiences that wouldn't typically engage in the processes. So it's in Glasgow there's a lot of people in maybe their 3rd trimester of life who are on local councils or community organisations who have lots of time to come and tell you their concerns, and often what happens is architects respond to this very small group of people and what they're saying, believing that that's building a brief or building something for the community, but it's not. It's really building something for people who believe they're representing the community, but that does not happen very often. So we try to find ways to engage as broad an audience as possible. And we also appreciate though that the varying landscape and the varying localised personal, social, political and financial constraints which significantly impact on the development of our project. And at the beginning of projects we always strive to uncover the key factors which will transform and reinvigorate a community, and we believe that we can only really do that by bringing together the professional and the personal. And we have to act as a key link between our clients and the people we work with. So whether that's getting CEOs from Atkins, big, huge architecture and engineering firm, to come and do workshops with young people to actually listen to what they're saying, to creating more of those dining experiences where we can put people all at the same level, all having a similar discussion, and kind of trying to remove that hierarchy of expertise and of knowledge. And I guess that takes often an approach which has to be very sensitive and very tactful and objective, and help people to understand that what they want and what they need can be two very different things, and that takes a lot of time to listen to participants. To really listen to people takes time. You can't just nod your head and then just do what you were going to do anyway, which I think happens a lot. And we kind of believe that it's our responsibility as people who are being paid to listen to people, to ask about the obvious and uncover the obscure, and really be put to work by the communities that we work for. And we understand that quick change, as I mentioned before, is often evidenced by reporting. A lot of people find in your career write a lot of reports. Clients love reports, and I find myself endlessly writing reports. But with that, we recognise that exists, and that's something we have to do. So we try and make them as legible and easy to understand as possible. Again, this is not super fancy, complex, information is beautiful diagram, that my gran can't read those diagrams, but she can kind of read this. So I always like to think, can my gran understand what I'm doing? Because if she can, then everyone will be able to understand it. And that's really important when you're trying to communicate ideas back to people, but also ensure that what you've recommended or what you've provided to a client is truly representative of the community's wishes. And I feel like I spend half my day just battling with clients not to make sure that all the actual interesting stuff isn't put in a technical appendix, which is a daily battle. And also making sure that you're not ever over-promising. I think that's something that as architects and planners we do a lot as well. We always sell the big vision, but actually the reality is often not as exciting as that, and we need to be very careful about boiling really complex issues down into manifestos of buzzwords that paint a big picture but don't really provide the tools to paint it with, and that's something we're really concerned with in our office. Also, I think it's quite important that more and more as there is a struggle to get more work, I guess, in the traditional sense for architects, there's more and more architects being commissioned to work and consult with communities to create co-designed spaces or co-designed outcomes. And I think with that, there needs to be a particular discussion about aesthetic and style that becomes quite important. Over the past few years, I've personally seen, particularly in Glasgow and Scotland, many examples of community consultation and co-design opportunities being used as an opportunity to make or build work for architects or artists or designers who wouldn't have had the chance to build that work if they hadn't managed to massage it into this project. And this is not how we like to operate. The breadth of our experience goes across artistic practice, it goes into community engagement, it goes into placemaking, and it's those conversations and those discussions that we have that really inform our approach to the design process. It gives an understanding for us of how we want to shape our outcomes and our projects to ensure that they're engaging, they're legible, and they're original to that community. And our projects aren't driven by a particular aesthetic. We're never concerned that it looks like we made it. We don't have a Pidgin perfect style. Like, it can be a wallpaper, it can be a cone, it can be anything. But that doesn't bother me, that I'm not a cool architect who makes these wonderful old huts that are wood or something. You know, that's not where our influences come from. We do obviously draw on contemporary culture and that kind of broad spectrum of contemporary culture and influence that in the designs that we deliver, but we always just want to make things that we believe are robust and that we hope timeless, and are kind of bound by trends. Architects are quite trendy. We've got to ensure that people who have to live with these outcomes day to day are happy with them, and that they can be a real recognisable piece of civic identity, a platform for future activity, and a piece of infrastructure that they instantly recognise how to use within their community. We really pride ourselves on adding value and ambition to our projects and understanding our clients' needs and our own aspirations for finding the right tools to deliver compelling solutions for communities. And again, we're not focused on a predetermined outcome because we want things to look flashy for our portfolio or our website. And I think also what's really important is the outcome that we always think we're going to have at the beginning of a project. It's never that. It'd be great if it was, but it never is. And we go through quite a kind of torturous experience to arrive at a lot of our kind of final products. And yeah, they can be paper toolkits, they can be temporary cinemas, they can really be anything. And I guess it's a challenge for me to select one project that really encapsulates the work that we do. I guess one project that's important to me, as it's based in the neighbourhood in Glasgow where my father grew up, Sight Hill in the north of Glasgow, is perhaps a good example of the work that we do. And perhaps also a project that could be quite easily replicated here in Pristina or across wider Kosovo as a way to better involve people of all ages in the decision-making processes around their built environment. So this is Sight Hill. It's not hugely exciting. It's bound by a motorway on all sides, so it's kind of like a bit of a prison, and has very poor quality housing stock, and has really transitioned since the towers were built in the 60s, 70s, had a number of different generations exist and live with it. Also a lot of refugees to the UK in the 1990s, which are still the community that really exists there. So it is, however, though, one of the largest of 8 transformational regeneration areas in Glasgow, and it was actually proposed to be the site of the Youth Olympic Games in 2018, which Glasgow didn't win. We don't tend to win a lot of things in sport in Scotland, and that was no exception. But the proposals presented for what to do with the site post-Games have continued and are mostly unchanged. And it's basically creating a whole new part of the city in Glasgow, and doing that quite rapidly over the next 5 years or so. So yeah, it's actually the largest regeneration project in the UK outside of London, and it's a £250 million master plan between the Glasgow City Council and the Scottish Government. So there's been a lot, because obviously you're trying to do this from this, there's been a lot of talk and a lot of chatting to people who live there, people who have been moved out. So there's been quite extensive community engagement, and people are a bit fed up with it now. They don't really want to talk to anyone anymore. They don't really want to give their opinion because they don't believe that this will go to that anytime soon. And this is obviously a problem because we need to have people involved and understand what's happening within the spaces that they inhabit or they will inhabit. So we were brought in by the client in a bit of a last-ditch attempt, I guess, to get people involved and to feel that they had some ownership. And I guess we didn't really know how to do that at the beginning of the process. But what we did do is try and really get to the crux of the problem. And I think what it was is that people just didn't understand what that was. You know, we see this drawing and think, okay, there's a boulevard, this is residential housing, this is high-rise private housing here, this is sports leisure, connects to a school. We understand that, and the people designing this master plan and the council just kind of assumed everyone else did. So one of the first things we did was we were just out on site quite a lot. Some of the housing hasn't been pulled down yet. And we just got this like spray chalk, and we just spent time trying to draw on the ground with people passing by, like, do you realise how big one of these houses might be, or how big this boulevard might be, and it's actually going to be here, so that they began to understand scale. And they'd actually been promised, where you can see where the football pitch is, to the right of that, there's like a small space there. They'd been promised this community garden, and it's like 20 metres by 20 metres, and they thought this was huge. And then they drew it on the ground and they were like, what? That's all we're getting? all of this, we're getting 20 by 20 meters, and it kind of pissed them off. They weren't very happy about it, and from that they became really engaged because they were like, wait a minute, someone's trying to like pull a shady one on us here, so we're going to work with Marc and Anna, who I was leading the project with, to try and change this if we can. So we kind of recognised that actually the anger was something we had to work with, and to see it as a positive thing. And we kind of just developed what I call like a package holiday. So we created this kind of program of every week doing a different activity or an event, and a lot of that was actually about taking them out with Sighthill and taking them out with this space and getting them into the rest of the city and getting them excited about the potential of what might happen within their community. So we went on tours and visits to other community gardens, to other play spaces, to other new developments, and with quite a small group. You know, there's only about 100 families that live in some of this existing housing right now, and a lot of those are older people, so there's 1 or 2 people. So there was maybe, you know, about 250 people living in the area. So we took a small group of about 10-15 most weeks, plus people have jobs and commitments, out to start undertaking these different recce's into the city. And we did a lot of different things with them, from visioning activities to live building. We did gardening and craft classes, we did community suppers, just trying to really engage that diverse audience. So people from different ethnic backgrounds, people of different ages, people who had different roles in the community, just trying to get everyone to come together and for just one moment be a community and be able to stand up and ask questions about what's happening, what is happening in our community, when are the diggers coming on site, when are the bulldozing the kids play part, what is the timeline, what is happening, because there just wasn't a system to do that. And I think what was really important about this project was the idea of making and doing. And again, this doesn't look like architecture, but it was all taking place in architecture or around architecture, talking about architecture. Whether people realised it at the time is a different thing, but that's what we were doing. So distraction is often quite a good tool to get people interested in things. And I guess this kind of community space that I mentioned right at the beginning, we thought what would be a really good kind of conclusion point for the project would be to get them to kind of prototype what they might want to do in that community space. So they held this large outdoor gala event. We worked with that group of people who had came with us on different site visits to stage this event, and we got free food donated from big local supermarkets, and the kids designed the tablecloth. So kind of like a more domestic version of what we did in Venice, essentially, but designed with the people. And the project spanned just over a year. We were the only designers, architects working exclusively in Sighthill, and the only community consultant on this £250 million project. We did not get paid anything even slightly close to 0.01% of that. But it was a really important project to be involved in. And again, like visually, the outcomes may not look very cool, and I understand that, but that wasn't what was really important to us in this project. It was about building capacity with the existing local residents, and it was about creating accessible activities and a cultural program for the residents to grow their confidence as a collective community and further their understanding of the complex systems of development that were surrounding them. And we were also asked to feed in and support into conversations that were happening live to develop this master plan. So we were at this kind of go-between between the planners and the community, and we did actually manage to inform some real significant decisions that were being made within the phasing of the master plan in particular. We fundraised for more funding as well to allow the community to do more work. When we left, again, with that active handover, we recognised that we were going to have to disappear when our contract ended because we have to make money somewhere else. But we didn't want to just walk away, so we spent a bit of the budget that we had in terms of our time to fundraise, to bring in someone else to do our work. So that was really important. But I think overall, you're wondering why I have this picture of a bowl up, but I think what's important to point out on this project is that when we first started, the client was obsessed with getting this container this like shipping container on site. They were like, we're going to put a shipping container on the site and we'll put tools in it and they'll all just start digging up the ground and making a garden. It's going to be great. And I just was like, it's not going to happen, dude. What are you crazy? It's not going to work that way. And we spent a lot of time having to be like, okay, we'll get the container and just kind of distract them. So we didn't get this big container, some more stuff arriving in their community. Because I guess like what we realised was sometimes, again, it's that what you want and what you need, and what you think you're going to have at the beginning is often very different from what you get at. Because we were having lots of meetings with the community in this local community centre, as they were calling it, but you had to pay 10 pence for every plastic cup and every plastic bowl that you used. So to have a meeting with like 20 people, it was costing you £2 or £4. And it's quite a poor community, so they're not going to do that because they don't want to spend £4 on plastic papers and plates. So we thought rather than kind of focusing on this container, we would spend a bit of time working with all the local kids in the local schools to create this really extensive crockery set. So plates, bowls, cups, everything. And we made this big hamper basket for it. And basically every kid in Sight Hill either painted the inside or around the bowl or the plate, and it was a way for them to actually have the useful toolkit to bring them together. That they didn't need a container, they just needed a bowl and a cup. And it's a crockery set nonetheless, but it's actually a really simple, clear domestic tool that people are familiar with, they know how to use, and it's not scary to them. So we thought this was a really important first step to bring people together to discuss their future in Sight Hill. So I understand time is short tonight, and I don't want to let us run over tonight. So I guess in summary, what I thought was important to do tonight was not just show you lots of projects, but tell you why we do them that way. And I guess for me, I believe that it's important to recognise and be honest about quick change. I guess that's something really important in pushing it as well. Quick change is often attached to public budgets, the financial year, when April's coming up, so let's spend lots of money and do stuff, but then it doesn't really mean anything. It's something that clients just want evidence that they've did something, so be very aware of that. We believe in long-term results in community, not quick change. We believe it's really important as architects and planners to act as the agent between the client and the community, and constantly remind the client, whoever they might be, that through working together with the community, they will decrease that distance between them and the community, and ultimately they will save money at the end of the day, and they will also build the groundworks for a more conducive and reciprocal relationship in the future. We believe in an in-house process, not an in-house style. I think every project we undertake at Pidgin Perfect is an opportunity to re-examine our beliefs and ensure that they are suitable for the community or the people that we're working with, but also for the changing environment of the world around us and the challenges that architecture and planning and the development sector is facing in times of economic and political uncertainty. And speaking very personally, I believe it's a real privilege to be given the opportunity to understand the world through many different perspectives on a daily basis, in many different places and countries all over the world. And that's what working with people and working with communities really provides you with. And as Managing Director at Pidgin Perfect, I always continually stress the importance of to our team of investing fully in every conversation and every consultation that we undertake, so that we can really feel that we're benefiting the people who have been involved in our process and that they do become more active citizens. And this is how I believe that we, and by we I mean everyone in this room, can help to build more resilient places and communities. And also, before I finish, just wanted to again remind you that the exhibition is upstairs and it's on until Sunday, so if you have already seen it, bring someone else along to see it. And the publication as well, take copies of it for friends, family, whoever. It's got some really great contributions from people that we're really inspired by, including Jack Self, who is the curator of the British Pavilion at the Venice Biennale in 2016, and Simo Vasanen, who's a Vogue artist and a designer based in Berlin, and also it features two really incredible Scottish organisations, one called the Stove Network, who's looking at rural communities in Scotland and how arts and culture can be used to invigorate them, and Kinning Park Complex, which is a community centre working with refugees in Glasgow. Yes, please do take one and make some time. And yeah, I guess that's really all I have to contribute this evening, so thanks for listening. I'm sorry I spoke really fast, I couldn't slow down. And if anyone has any questions, then feel free to maybe ask some now. I think maybe I still have like 5-10 minutes. And if not, if you're shy, you can ask me later. Thank you. Oh, okay, so there are some questions.
Actually, it's more a comment than a question.
Okay.
First of all, I'm now I'm writing my thesis in urban planning, and for 5 years studying urban planning, our professor always tells us to interact with the community when we do a project. But 22 years of my life, I've never been able to interact in another project that, I don't know, the government is doing. So it's like different in reality. And from your presentation, which was very pleasant, so thank you, I understood that you really interact with like the people around. But it's difficult in my country, I'm Albanian, from Albania, I don't know, maybe it's different here, to interact with people. I don't know, how do you make people like to come to you? Like, because we do different stuff and they still don't really react to what we do. Yeah. I'm talking as a student, and sometimes when the government does something, they don't really involve community, or if they do involve people they want to involve.
I mean, I think it's a really difficult question to solve within this space, but I think like my kind of response to that is, again, it goes back to the way that maybe we think as architects and planners. We think what we do is so important, and it's like we are God, we are like changing the world, we're shifting lands, and like we think it's so important, but people don't actually care very much, because what they're concerned about is getting up and feeding kids and going to work and making money and coming home, and on the 25 minutes a week that they have to do their own thing, they don't want to come to a workshop about a tree that's being planted over there. You know, so I think we always try to find ways to, first of all, spend a lot of time understanding what is the daily routine of a place. So what do people do? What does it just look like to be them? I've spent a whole afternoon sitting in a bingo hall watching old ladies play bingo, and I've spent happily many hours in a pub watching some young guys sit in the pub drinking and what they're talking about, and trying to understand like, where are the spaces that they actually are loose and they're going to express things, and then if you can kind of find that space and then do something for them that they care about and they're interested in. A lot of times it can be something as simple as food. And have a genuine conversation with them as a human first. Then you can go, by the way, I'm also an architect, I'm doing this project, what do you think about it? And then they might go, okay, I'll talk to you now. So I think you can create beautiful tools, you can make lovely models, you can create amazing exhibitions of what you plan to do, but it's getting people to cross the threshold and come into the door is really, really difficult. So you kind of have to go to them, and you have to work within what they do every day, and I think that's sometimes the best place to start, but it is really hard, and be under no illusion, like a lot of the times we fail, so it'll take us 4 or 5 attempts to get more than 10 people, to show up, but you kind of have to make people believe that you are interested and you are representing them, and that's why I brought up a lot of those conversations about being conflicted, about being paid by someone who's causing the problem and then asking them to solve it. So it's something we're always resolving, but I believe that I would rather know that we do have a genuine interest and be there and help find a way than not be there at all. Does that happen somewhere? Over the back.
I want to ask you, as an architect and based on your experience, what is the main or the critical elements that we should consider as an architect and planner when we want to develop the place attachment between the society and the space and the neighborhood. And yeah, could you please explain?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Again, like I don't know if I'm even qualified to really answer that, but I think like there's something that I think about every single day, doing my job, whether it's again dressing as a monster or doing buildings or whatever. It's this. My tutor in university was David Page, who runs a firm called Pidgin, who are very big in Scotland, and he always spoke about scale. So from 1 to 1 to 1 to 10 to 1 to 100 to 1 to 1,000 to 1 to 10,000 to 1 to 100,000, and just every decision you make, think about how people will interact with it at every single scale. So when you put a door there, that door is at a 1 to 1 scale with the handle. And where is the handle? But also that door has an impact on how people might engage with that street, but also where people are coming into that door has an impact on a neighbourhood. And just trying to think of every decision as not being isolated to when you're doing a master plan, I'll put this block here, but thinking about what does that really do in all scales. So that's something I always think about, because I think it's such a big question, what's the most important thing to think about, because that should change, I think, in all the projects that you do. Something will always be more important, something will always be more difficult or significant to solve, but I think that's something, especially when we're so in computers these days, and we just zoom in and out like this, and it's like 1 to 1, 1 to 100,000, like, it's so easy to forget about how that actual physical space feels. So maybe that's my very simple suggestion. Should we do one more maybe, then let the next speaker? Oh, go back.
Has your firm been able to find any sort of open platform for a collaboration in Pristina, or is it Pristina not there yet?
I'm sorry, can you just, sorry, I hear you.
Has your firm been able to find an open platform in Pristina for a collaboration, or is it not there yet?
So this is the closest I've got to, which is really exciting. So, because I was here last summer, I was awarded the 2016 Winston Churchill Fellowship for Design, and I travelled across Albania, Kosovo, Turkey and Azerbaijan, looking at where and how young people were being involved in their built environment, and obviously societies that were going through significant change and transitioning. I met with a lot of people here from UN, UNDP. I also met with people at Pristina Hackerspace and all different levels of organisation, and I think there was a sort of shared frustration about how to self-initiate something in terms of development, and I don't have an answer to that, but I think it takes a lot of time. But I guess the exciting thing for me is seeing how many young people are in this room, how many students are in this room and are giving up their Thursday night in the summer to come and listen to me talk. That says that there's people here who are actually really engaged and interested, so it's really the responsibility of people in this room to find a way to do something. And again, hopefully you'll have seen a scale of things building within our practice. I started off by building a bench and an umbrella, and something as simple as that can begin to build the foundations for doing different things. So no, I haven't, but that doesn't mean I don't believe it doesn't exist, and it's the kind of the key elements for are probably in this room. All right. Okay. Thank you.